I don't blame her for not knowing those things to some extent, because she's new. And that just pointed out to me that she's at a bit of a disadvantage here. And so it would seem to me to have been another very good reason why those councillors that are in the council for a long time and that must have known that she was getting herself into a little bit of trouble with some of the things she was saying, really should have taken that into consideration and should perhaps have voted to defer the vote, to give the lady a chance to go back and revise, but they didn't. That was their choice. I'm not criticising them for that. I'm merely saying that as a human person, had I been in that position, that would kind of have been my view. Oh God, the woman is struggling. Maybe we should hold off on this and not tie her to something when she clearly is not 100% on top of it. And I'm not again suggesting that that's her fault for 1 second. So here we are. The position we're in at the minute is that the councillors have voted to accept this arrangement, and the arrangement ties us not only to us putting money in, us putting buildings in, they putting money in, it going into this company. If we make, there's all sorts of terms and conditions, like, you know, if you haven't completed 50,000 square feet buildings, 2 of them by the end of year 2, the partnership is deemed not to have worked, and so it dissolves. And the land, we use the land, and there's all sorts of other things that we have to put in all this money to make the land, the plots, more and more valuable. And we in Kilkenny, our money is responsible for doing that forevermore, and yet we get nothing out of that. That's all our responsibility. We have to pay for it. We're also, by the way, going to pay for all the, shall we say, the secretarial support, the administrative support to this company. And they think it will cost about 250,000 to pay a manager in the first year, but they'll endeavour to keep that as low as they can and to keep things low. So if anybody is looking for a job at 250,000 a year, there's one going. It was mentioned, and again, I want to be fair. I want to be fair about this, because it was important to Colette Byrne that people did understand this point. She made a categorical statement that Joe Crockett will not be involved in the joint venture partnership. So I'm passing that on. She made a categorical statement to that effect, so it's only fair to pass that on as well. So there's loads and loads of other stuff. That's roughly where we're at. How people respond now, what they want to say. One of the things that she did briefly address was that people seemed to be annoyed because they weren't involved in public consultation, and that essentially Kilkenny County Council had consulted with people up the yazoo over the last 6 months on this. But what the woman didn't seem to understand, and not just her, but Martin Penderville as well, and to a lesser extent Dennis, because I noticed that Dennis actually stood back away from it and he was a little bit more circumspect than others. But people went and got involved in consultations, and she referenced the fact today that there had been over 500 people, which was an unheard of number anywhere in Ireland, involved in a public consultation process on the brewery site. She referenced the fact that even after that there were a further 78 submissions received on the same site. And I cannot remember at this stage whether it was her or I don't know which of them got up at that stage and said, and after all those consultations, we made huge changes. We took away these 3 buildings here and we made the park bigger, right? What they didn't seem to understand was the 3 buildings that they said they took away were actually never down there in the first place. They were just shall we say, artist's impressions. The direct consultation on the brewery site was what was generated there and then at the consultations. It wasn't as if they were voting out things that had been voted in before. They weren't. And that too struck me. I thought to myself, oh my God, are all these people, and they don't actually know even what we were voting on and they were drawn up, actually now getting us involved in this partnership arrangement. And I got really scared. And finally, I got really scared today because I got a letter from a councillor. And even though I do argue with a lot of councillors, in the main I respect them. And we do actually get on, many of us, on and agree on a lot of things, even though we disagree on things too. But I got a letter from a councillor today, a Fine Gael councillor. And it was a very nice letter. And the councillor was trying to explain their position on this to me. And in the course of trying to explain their position on it to me, they explained to me that they were worried about this after the in-committee meeting last week, because lots of things didn't make sense. But that since they were speaking to the executive since then, that they now realise that the stuff that they were told, and I have this in writing, by the way, and I'm not going to name anybody anyway, that the stuff that they were told at the in-committee meeting last week was actually wrong, and that they were told different stuff since then, and that they liked the different stuff they were told better than the lies they were told last week. They didn't specify what the different stuff they were told today was, but they were now going to vote for this because the different stuff was much better than the other stuff. And that they had thought before, because the executive and everybody else had been telling them that the brewery site was going to generate thousands of jobs. But that after being down there today and having spoken with the executive, that they now know that the site, as they were informed, is not suitable at all for thousands of jobs. And there's not going to be big multinationals in it, and there's not going to be thousands of jobs. But that there might be, and Colette Byrne echoed that herself today, coffee shops and wine bars.
Did she mention supermarkets?
No, just coffee shops and wine bars. And he mentioned the same, coffee shops and wine bars. And what worried me about that was that it seems odd to me, because it's not something I would do. If I go to a meeting and somebody tells me something, and I go away from the meeting and I discover, as the Fine Gael councillor told me today that he discovered, that the things he had been told at that meeting were incorrect. And if I go back to the same people and they tell me something else, I think I'd be a little bit cagey about believing it the second time. And I might be a little, maybe slow to jump in and vote for it until at least I would check out if maybe that thing too was correct or incorrect. And I was terribly surprised to hear at the council meeting today, people didn't say exactly the same thing, but in many guises they were hinting at the same thing. We were concerned, but now we're not, because our fears were allayed. And that worried me. And I'm worried because I wonder if councillors really understand the implications of what they're voting for. I wonder if the people in Kilkenny really understand the implications of this going forward for the brewery site and for the town as a whole. And I'm concerned that the councillors had a choice today. They were asked a simple question, and it was put, I think, fairly respectfully to them. There's an awful lot of people who just want to know what's going on. They really want you to tell us, to share your information, answer our questions and listen to us. Will you please defer your vote today until next Friday? Only 3 days. Please defer. Just 3 days. And come along tonight and explain to us what I've tried to explain to you. And they didn't do that. And they could have. And I think that's disrespectful to us. And that's why this meeting is on. So we'll take a break now. And after the break, we'll throw the floor open, but we'll give councillors and TDs the floor first in case they would like to make any comment, and then we'll throw it over for questions, whatever. Is everybody happy with that? Yes. And sorry for keeping you so long.